Welcome to Entecom's Food Safety Podcast, designed to bring you tools and tips that will make food safety management a little easier. I'm Janice Giddy, and I look forward to sharing our podcasts with you. Food safety managers often feel overwhelmed and stressed by the many complicated compliance requirements and sometimes feel quite isolated whilst trying to make sense of it all. With these bi-monthly podcasts, Entecom chats to our food safety friends who've been working in the food industry for many years and are keen to share advice, tips and tools to make food safety management a little easier. In our first podcast, we discuss how planning your food safety calendar can help you manage your workload better. We give a warm welcome to our guest, Natasha Transel, Quality Assurance and Quality Management Systems Manager at Dynamic Commodities in Port Elizabeth. Natasha shares some food safety calendar planning tips with us to help us manage and provide structure to our workload to cope better and ensure better management of the food safety tasks that lie ahead. Hi Natasha, and thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your food safety management tips with us today.
Hi Janice, thanks for inviting me. Yes, I'm the Quality Assurance and Quality Management Systems Manager, and I, of course, have a very competent team working with me. And I'm also very fortunate that we are supported by management and that quality and food safety is at the top of the list within our company. So the products that we produce, I don't know if everyone is familiar with it, is the Island Way Sorbet brand frozen desserts. And that we export predominantly to the US, but also all across Far East, Australia, everywhere basically. And then we also have another leg to the facility, which is our fruit processing side, which we make various different products, and that is predominantly exported to Japan, and also food safety, quality, extremely important in the Japanese market.
I can imagine that would be quite stringent, Natasha. And I've seen some of the workwear that you have to wear in your facility, and it really is quite something to see the headgear and, you know, the full shoulder gear and the covering that you have to wear. So incredible amount of food safety precautions that are taken there. And today when we talk about having to manage the workload and you're having to face all these audits, surveillance audits, FSCC audits, FDA inspections, customer audits, how do you feel? I mean, do you ever feel overwhelmed?
Yes, certainly. It can very easily become overwhelming, especially if a lot of that happens very close to each other. And if you don't plan and prepare well for those in advance, you could easily feel overwhelmed.
So tell us how you face your year and in the terms of planning, especially around all of these scheduled audits and the activities that you need to do on a monthly basis to make sure that you stay on track. What type of calendar do you use and what works best for you?
So we first, as a safety team, plan all the actions, including the known audit dates or estimated dates, customer visits, and then also our whole food safety plan. And in terms of the importance of scheduling it chronologically, like having your management review, having your HACCP review, having your validations done. And once all of that is set out chronologically, we slot that in, and I do use Outlook's calendar. I like that because you're able to share it with everyone, to send out notifications to everyone. And then also you can decide yourself in terms of your reminder setting, how long before the time do you want to be reminded about it, to prepare. And it's just, I found that if you do that, it does work, whereas putting it maybe in a different type of calendar, which doesn't come up on your monitor reminding you something's due or scheduled.
So do you find that your team works well with that as well, and that they are reactive and they really do attend the meetings when you require them to, and that everybody uses the Outlook calendar to manage their food safety tasks and what you've assigned to them?
Yes, I must say that I think I'm very lucky with the team that I do have, that because food safety and quality is very high on the priority list and also supported by top management, that everyone does prioritize. Each month, our quality systems administrator will review everything that was on the calendar, and anything that's overdue, he will send out reminders to the individuals and copy me in that. And if there was anything specific that prevented them from doing it timeously, we'll address it and make sure it's done. And in doing that, it also prevents things from becoming too far behind.
Fantastic. And so you're planning in 12 months ahead of time? I mean, how far do you plan in advance?
Yes, we do plan full 12 months ahead of time, because we include in that from calibrations to validations, whether that be through third-party assessments and analysis. And then also we slot everything surrounding that. We build up the skeleton, so to speak, and just fill up the slots and make sure our internal audits is spread out over 12 months, and our supplier assessments, GMPs, food fraud, food defense, mock recalls, traceability testing, all of that's planned 12 months in advance. And then we just break it down into smaller portions on a monthly and up to weekly basis, depending on what it is.
Fantastic. So you've already started with that planning, and is everything already scheduled, Natasha?
Yes. So we're starting our planning with our management review to have a full review of our last year's performance against our objectives and reviews of everything. And we use that also, the outputs from that management review, when we do our HACCP review, because it's always relevant to consider the pitfalls from the prior year when you do any reviews going forward.
Yes, I should imagine that, looking back at last year, what did you find worked well in 2019, and maybe what is it that possibly could have worked better for you?
I think planning was one of the things that could have probably been a little bit better. And then also training. I think training was a little bit under pressure and just scheduling it. That we also did that version 5 training for our whole team. And these legislative changes also impacts the business, and it impacts your planning. So you also have to do horizon scanning, looking at the countries which you intend to export, looking at GFSI guidelines, and anything that's sort of on the horizon that you need to consider that could impact on your planning. Because if you don't, you do get caught unaware, and it affects your scheduling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there were a lot of changes last year, and they all came fairly quickly. So I think everybody had to shuffle things around a bit. And it's a huge role that you play, Natasha. And I really think it must be quite a challenge keeping it all together, because seasonal changes happen, environmental changes happen.
Yes, there's been quite a lot of challenges this past year. The new FDA nutritional guidelines and packaging guidelines coming into effect, so all of that changing. Product nutritionals, testing, analysis, calculations, converting that to packaging. And then also the new HARPC system for preventative controls for human food that's come into effect. Having training done for that, there was the R638 local municipal training requirements. There's always a lot of things that pop up that you have to take in stride and try and slot in your planning if it wasn't planned already.
So I think it's an excellent example of how we can just manage everything that comes along our way by taking it in our stride, having a look at our calendars, and also delegating a lot of the work where we can. I'd love to have a chat to you about those FDA requirements and how you've managed to address that possibly in a later podcast. But I just want to say thank you so much for your insight and sharing some tips with us today. So thank you for that so much, Natasha. All the best, and I hope you have a great year, and I hope things go according to plan. And we look forward to having you back on our podcast again.
Thanks so much, Janet. It was a pleasure.
That was Natasha from Dynamic Commodities with food safety tips, helping you with your food safety calendar. Thank you for listening to our podcast and hope that the content was valuable to you. Keep a watch out for our next bi-monthly food safety podcast, sharing tips and advice from food safety experts.